How does he know? How did Dave find out about this? My marriage is over. I just know it. The courts will consider Dave to be the primary guardian of our children, and custody will be awarded to him. I will be a social outcast shunned by almost everyone in this church-going community. She was forgiven by the priest with gentle words, but with a condemning expression on blade. Just like he did to Mary Skelton, she lasted only about 3 months after her husband found out about her affair. 3 lonely months when the rest of the community avoided her, despite the fact that the priest forgave her. This community really hates cheating spouses. I slammed on the brakes and screeched to a stop, stopping 2 meters from colliding with Lut, a little girl who ran out into the road chasing a ball. She looked to be about 3, about the same age as my Paula. I was driving too fast, too preoccupied with my huge problem. The child's mother frowned at me from the sidewalk, even though it was her fucking fault for not looking after her child. I looked around and saw that I was next to a large park 5 minutes from home. I suppressed my fears, drove with shaking hands for another 200 meters, and stopped before knocking someone down absent-mindedly. How could Dave even think? No, that's stupid. As soon as Dave found out that I was having an affair, it makes sense that he thought badly of me and wanted to cover up his bases. He can run a small editorial office from home, but that doesn't mean he's stupid. Far from it. As soon as he found out, of course, he thought that this was not my first case and began to do DNA tests for children. But how the hell did he know? Both Carl and I were so careful. My thoughts reminded me of Carl. I picked up my phone and moved on to Carla. If Dave ever asks, a recently started colleague. My motto was to stay as close to the truth as possible. My message, "Can you talk?" While waiting for an answer, I kept kicking myself. Why? Oh, why did I let this smooth-talking little asshole seduce me? No. Come on, be honest, it's not fair. The way we slept together for the first time was not love and is understandable. It happened when we were out of town. We just spent 2 whole days discussing an exhausting deal, celebrated with too much champagne, and fell into bed together. If I had stopped at the first case, everything would have been fine. I would have a secret that I would regret until my last day. A serious secret that could only harm my husband and family. But I, or more correctly, we, alas, we were both caught up in the excitement of sleeping with someone after more than 10 years of marriage. The charm of the illegality of it all. The thrill of mischief. The superiority of knowing that we were cheating on our spouses and successfully hiding it from 2 people who knew us so well. Or they didn't hide it very well, as it turns out. My thoughts were interrupted by a message from Carl. "No, I'm having dinner with Mary and the kids." What's the matter? Well, they say suffering loves company. He knows. Dave knows about us. How the hell did Dave find out about this? We were incredibly careful. We got together only when we were away, and then only if we managed to rent adjoining. We have never entered the door of the same room together. We behaved absolutely normally both in public and when we were at home with our spouses. Damn it, Mary is behaving normally, so he didn't tell her anything. What do you think he'll say? How angry is he? I don't know. We haven't talked yet. I ran away as soon as I found out he knew. This time I didn't have to wait long for an answer. Please beg him not to tell Mary. A selfish little jerk. To hell with my marriage, as long as it doesn't concern him. Asshole, I'll probably tell his wife if Dave doesn't. As I said, suffering loves company. So how were we discovered? I made sure that my love for my husband did not suffer. I didn't introduce any new positions or techniques that I learned from Carl. A damn chance. Making love to Carl was vanilla and uninspiring. It was smaller, lasted less time, and was nowhere near as diverse as my Dave. In fact, if it weren't for the illegality of all this, it wouldn't have lasted the death 6 times and the 7 months that we actually had. How unlucky that we were discovered before I was going to end our affair after our next trip in 2 weeks. Folks, Megan, how we were discovered doesn't matter. We were exposed, and now my husband trusts me so little that he does DNA tests on our children. My mind went back 20 minutes when I came home late, too late to enjoy dinner with my house family. Fortunately, Dave worked from home, took the kids to school, and cooked dinner 6 nights a week. I was supposed to cook on Sundays, but I usually went and got takeaways. Let's just say cooking is not one of my strengths. When I entered the door, I froze at the terrible sight. Dave is sitting on one of the kitchen chairs with a cotton swab on a stick, wiping the lop inside of Jillian, our 5-year-old daughter's mouth with it. An open sterilized bag is lying on the table. Peter, our 7-year-old son, was also standing there, either waiting for his turn or having already finished. I've read enough stories and watched enough TV shows to know that I'm watching the opening. Asked. My initial reaction was rage. How dare Dave think the kids aren't his? I wasn't a cheater, or was I? Knowing that I needed to think about how best to get through this, I just turned around and ran away. Just before I did, Dave turned to look at me with a neutral expression. I raised my hands to my cheeks, remembering the feeling of blood draining from them, which was a blatant admission of the truth of what the testing accused me of. 20 minutes later, I'm here, reflecting on the destruction of my family and my society. I knew Dave. I knew him as well as he knew himself. As soon as he was ready to confront me, he did it firmly and calmly. He wouldn't want the whole town to know that he had been horned. If I can't stop him from divorcing me, I'll ask him to do it quietly, just to say that we've drifted apart. This way, even if I lose my marriage, I will still be able to stay in the city and meet my children, possibly sharing joint custody. I really love them. My mind wandered for God knows how long, scrolling through different scenarios of how Dave would react, trying to find the scenario that would allow me to lose the least. Suddenly, I realized that I was thinking like a defeatist. I use my knowledge of Dave and assume that the breakup will be self-evident, and the best scenario would be a quiet divorce. But what if I'm wrong? What if I put myself at Dave's mercy? I'll tell him about the excusable first time and the unfortunate sequel. He doesn't want to divorce any more than I do. Of course, his faith in me will be shaken, and it will take years for him to fully trust me again, but I will still have respectability and community support. If you do this, Megan, you're going to have to be completely honest with Dave. One whiff of lies, and you'll get to the curb faster than a fleet-footed cheetah. I looked at my watch. It's been a little less than 2 hours since I discovered that I wasn't as clever at hiding my affair with Carl as I thought I was. 2 hours since I went from being confident in my marriage to fighting for his very life. 2 hours since I saw my husband testing my children's DNA have raised my blood pressure by 100 points. I quickly typed a message. I'm going home to apologize to you for my affair with Carl. Please don't do anything hasty. Then slowly headed home in my car. Well, what happened after that surpassed my worst nightmare. 10 minutes after sending my message, I got home. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, Dave jumped out the door, said to me, "Stay here and look after the kids," and drove off screaming in his car. Later, I found out that he went straight to Carl's house, and when my lover opened the door, broke his nose with one blow, screaming, "You're using my wife, right?" These words stopped Carl's wife from calling the police, and together with Dave, they found out the whole story when Carl begged them to call an ambulance for him. As Carl said, he was hit, and his wife said he hit the wall himself. The police investigation came to nothing. By the time he returned from the hospital, the locks had been changed in his house. His wife had made an online appointment with a divorce lawyer. How do I know all this? Dave came straight home, told me to pack my bag and leave. After one look at the fire in his eyes and the bruises on his knuckles, guessing where they came from, I did as he asked and fled to a middle-class motel. The next day, I saw a bandaged Carl at the breakfast bar. All hopes that Dave would be quiet were dashed early in the afternoon when Carl and I were invited to the office of the chief operating officer and executed without delay. She didn't cite any moral principles because our contracts just said that she shouldn't hire scumbags like us. I realized what the near future would be like when I called all three divorced lawyers in not our city, but no one answered my call. When I went to the diner for dinner, the waitress refused to acknowledge my existence. The nail in the coffin, however, was that I met with Carl and found out that family, friends, and former work colleagues already treated him like a leper. Within 2 days, spurred on by a visit from the motel manager, who stated that his establishment was fully booked. Yes, that's right. Carl and I resigned ourselves to the inevitable and left town. We didn't want to become social ghosts as we saw Mary Skelton become last year when she was caught cheating. We drove 300 kilometers and started a new life together. It didn't last long. I know I'm probably saying the damn obvious things, but when two scammers come together, there's no trust. I never realized how important trust is in a relationship until the evening I had to fight the urge to check his phone while he was in the bathroom. By the time I finally got up the courage to ask Dave if I could come back to town to visit the kids over the weekend, they had all found a replacement for me. He was an excellent catch, and as soon as he was free, the vultures, being attractive, singles and widows, declared their interest. By the time I cleaned up, there was already an elegant set of shoes under Dave's bed. My children had a stepsister, and they were already calling another woman mom. Now that I'm too old to start another family, all I can do is sit and reflect on the lonely life ahead of me. Dave's epilogue. I'm lying here looking at the bedside clock, 11:05 p.m. The soft breathing of Ruth lying next to me reminds me of our marathon of the last two. Yes, life is good, although a little bizarre. My wife cheated on me, but before I could mourn the death of this marriage too much, I was seduced by a younger, more beautiful, more adventurous girl. The surreal last day of my old marriage still confuses me. Maybe if I digest this in my head for the 10,000th time, it will finally make sense. How did everything go? On the last day of my marriage, Megan ran home and, without saying a word, just turned around and left again. I heard her car start up and drive away. I was busy for a few more minutes, and by the time I called Megan's cell phone, it was busy. Finding no signs of her presence, I started putting the children to bed, and they quickly fell asleep. Unfortunately, it was not unusual for them to not see their mother before they went to bed. I went to the kitchen and was just about to call Megan again when the home phone rang. An unrecognized cell phone number appeared on the display. The next few minutes from memory went something like this. Hi, this is David Brown. Hi, Dave, this is Carl. Of course I knew Carl. He started working with my wife some time ago. I saw him at several work events and was even invited to his housewarming party. What was his wife's name?
Beck?
Something like that. He is very handsome, has a good figure, and is a couple of years younger than Megan. Carl, on the other hand, seemed like a bore to me. Smug. He looked down on me. The legend is in his own mind. The last person I would like to talk to after a hard day. That's why my next words probably didn't sound very friendly. Yes, Carl? Well, what can I do for you? What will it take? I had no idea what he was talking about, and I remained silent in confusion, forcing him to continue. If my wife finds out that I've been having an affair with Megan for the last 6 months or so, I'll lose my children. So I'll be honest, Dave, what does it take to keep your mouth shut? I don't remember dropping my phone and collapsing to the floor when the devastating news that my loving wife had betrayed me in the worst possible way hit my mind. I didn't suspect anything and couldn't believe it. Still, the pleading in Carl's voice was pretty convincing. Then my mind turned to a problem that had been frequently discussed recently. Why did my wife seem to be emotionally estranged from me and the kids over the last 6 months? Nothing drastic, just definitely something. Later, I realized that the first stage of grief, denial, lasted less than 30 minutes. This stage was replaced by anger. I was filled with blind rage, hiding the pain of my loss. I still had enough self control not to snap at Megan. It led to prison. However, her lover was a completely different person. As soon as I heard Megan was back, I drove to that asshole's house and with all the hit him. The feeling of bones and cartilage breaking under my fist made me smile even now. Carl's forced confession was completely unnecessary for me, but necessary for his wife. Releasing my anger allowed me to go home and calmly tell Megan to fuck off. Listening to my woman's light snoring in bed, I realized that I was no closer to solving the mystery than the last 100 times I thought about it. Why did Carl himself sow the seeds of the destruction of his own marriage by confessing to me when I was completely unaware of anything? Again, I couldn't help but think that Megan's strange behavior that evening when she came home from work and immediately ran away without saying a word had something to do with all this. I replied that evening in my head. I made dinner as always. Megan confirmed that she would be late, so he sat and ate with the children, chatting. Then it began to clear up. Jillian complained that she had a sore spot in her mouth. I grabbed a flashlight, turned her lower lip away, and saw the ulcer. Going to our first aid cabinet, I grabbed a tube of Bongilla and one of the individually packaged cotton swabs, opened it, smeared it, and used the cream as intended. Absolutely nothing to do with the mystery in question. Damn it, I'm starting to suspect that I'll never know. Turning on my side, I put my hand under the sleeping beauty's head and hugged her. The hell with the mystery, life is good.